The creation. When I was a child, I was filled with curiosity about the origins of the world. Where did the earth come from? Where did the stars come from? How did life begin? What is the place of humans among such a wide variety of plants and animals? I asked my grandfather these questions. My grandfather was very old. He was an educated man. He had studied with the priests when he was young. How did the world begin? Said grandfather. Let me tell you. At the beginning of the making of heaven and earth, when the earth had no shape and it was empty, the universe was a watery chaos, and darkness covered everything. God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. And God called the light day and the darkness night. And it was one day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters." And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And it was the second day. And God said, "Let the waters be gathered together. Let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth. And the waters gathered together, God called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit." And it was so. And God saw that it was good. And it was the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament to separate day from night." And God made two great lights, the sun and the moon, to rule over the day and the night. And God also made the stars. And God saw that it was good. And it was the fourth day. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth." And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of all kinds." And it was so. And God said, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth." And God saw that it was good. And it was the fifth day. And God said, "Let us make human beings in our image, and let them have dominion over all the creatures of the earth." And it was so. God created human beings, male and female, and blessed them, and said, "Be fruitful and multiply, and subdue the earth." And God saw everything that God had made, and it was very good. And it was the sixth day. On the seventh day, God rested. Now, I thought my grandfather's story was very beautiful, but I wasn't satisfied. If everything that God has created is good, then why do bad things happen? Why are some people evil? I asked those questions, and my father, who had been listening to grandfather tell the story, interrupted at this point. He said, "Let me tell you my answer. When God had made the heavens and the earth, but before any plants or animals were on the earth, God formed a man from the dust of the ground. God planted a beautiful garden in Eden in the east, and there in the garden God put the man that God had made. And out of the ground God made every tree that is good for food, as well as the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And God commanded the man, saying, 'You may eat freely of every tree in the garden, except the tree of knowledge of good and evil. For in the day you eat of that tree, you shall die.' Then God said, 'It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make him a helper.' So God formed every beast and every bird, and brought them one by one to the man to see what he would call them. The man gave names to all the creatures, but found no helper fit for him. So God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and took one of his ribs. And from the man God made a woman. And the man said, 'At last, this is a bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh.' Now the serpent was more subtle than any other creature that God had made. The serpent said to the woman, 'Why do you not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil?' And the woman said, 'We may not eat of that tree, lest we die.' And the serpent said, 'You will not die. God knows that when you eat from that tree, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God.' So the woman took from the fruit of the tree, and she ate it. And she gave some to her husband also, and he ate it. and their eyes were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And God called the man and said, "Where are you?" The man answered, "I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, so I hid myself." And God said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat?" And the man said, "The woman that you gave to me, she gave me the fruit from the tree, and I ate it." And God said to the woman, "What have you done?" And the woman said, "The serpent seduced me, and I ate." So God said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, you shall be cursed above all other animals." To the woman, God said, "Because you have done this, you will have great pain when you bear children, and your husband shall rule over you." To the man, God said, "Because you listened to the woman, you will have a hard life, and you will toil and sweat for your daily bread, till you return to the ground. For you are taken from dust, and to dust you shall return." And then God expelled them from the Garden of Eden. Now at this point, my grandmother couldn't stay silent anymore. She had to jump in, and she said, "What a typical story for a man. That's all the woman's fault. What nonsense." So I asked my grandmother, "Well, what do you say then? How do you think it all began?" My grandmother said this: "I like the wisdom story. Did you know that according to the wisdom tradition, wisdom is feminine? Here's what the book of Proverbs says about creation. In the beginning, God, by wisdom, founded the earth. By knowledge, God established the heavens and the earth. Wisdom is the prophetess, calling forth our understanding. God created wisdom at the very beginning, the first of God's acts of creation. Before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills had risen up, God brought her forth. When God made the heavens, she was there, right beside God, like a master workman. Wisdom was God's delight, and God rejoiced in her always. On the heights, beside the way, at the entrance to the cities, wisdom says, 'To you, O human beings, I call. The fear of God is the hatred of evil. Walk in the way of righteousness, and follow the paths of justice.'" And when my grandmother finished saying this, I said, "Now I'm really confused. How can there be so many creation stories? Which one is the true one?" My mother, who had been silent until now, said, "Don't worry, son. Our tradition has many stories to explain our origins. All of them have some truth in them. Learn from them to love what is good and to work for justice." So I said to my mother, "Well, which of these stories is your favorite?" And she said, "Actually, I prefer a different one. And it goes like this. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was in the beginning with God. All things were made through the Word. Without the Word was not anything made that was made. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. No one has ever seen God. It is the Word who has made God known to us." So I said to my mother, "Well, what does that mean? I don't understand that at all." And she said to me, someday you'll understand."